The other day I posted out on day 3 of forced isolation that I made a jig to put together B-frames. And I asked several of you if you would be interested in seeing what this jig does, and a number of you said you'd like to see it. I do post this out in 3 different B groups that, so I got, kind of from around our area of the state, some good feedback about it. So today I'm going to show you how I built the jig, and then I'm going to show you what the jig does in my particular needs. And first I'd like to talk about various bee frames. The first year when I started beekeeping, I think I bought them from Amazon or somewhere, but this is what the frame looked like. And then of course you had your side pieces. The fit wasn't necessarily all that terrific, but as a new beekeeper, I figured, well, that's just the way it is. So you put the side pieces on, and then you had these 2 pieces that you had to put on. And of course you're gluing it. And then they gave you some cheesy nails that you were supposed to hammer this thing together with. To me, that wasn't real smart. So we were using mechanical fasteners. We used a staple gun. And because we were using glue, the staple just kind of kept it in place. So we tried to keep it square as we were constructing it. So that's what that is. The frames that I bought recently, well, there's a couple other differences I'll show you about frames and frame construction. Frames also came that the difference of the width of one to the other was different. So when I did the groove in my bee boxes and put these newer frames in that were slightly thicker, the frames stood up from the bottom. So I had to go out and route out each of the boxes to accommodate the new frames. The frames that I'm buying now are from Man Lake, and I got them in S&T. And things I like about it is there's not 2 pieces. The bottom of the frame is 1 piece, and I like the fact that the groove is shorter than when you do it with the 2 pieces on the other frame, because I think it gives less room for beetles to accumulate or have a place to hide out from the bees. So the idea behind the jig was, of course, we're gluing, assembling, and then we're using a mechanical fastener with first we're using Type Bond number 3 glue. It is the finest, weatherproof, waterproof, everything. Holds, sets up pretty quickly, great glue. We apply it with a brush in a bowl, and we just paint the edges that we're getting ready as we assemble. So the idea behind that, and of course when we're putting the staples in, for our mechanical fastener, we're using a staple gun. We're using crown staples, and these particular ones are 1 inch, which I think is more than adequate with the glue to give us something solid while the glue dries, or just to give it that extra rigidity. So that's pretty much of that part. So now let's talk about what the actual jig is. When I make bee boxes, I usually start out with a dimension number that's considerably larger than what my bee box is. Of course, the ridge is in the side of the box, and then I run it through my table saw and I cut off a wedge. And I find these useful for lots of things. One, if I need to extend or raise that up for things to accommodate my top feeders or something like that, I can use a couple of these versus using a box. So that's where the idea came from. And these were extra pieces that I had left over from making box in forced isolation day 1. So this is the same size as the beehive box. And what I did is I created the equivalent of a 2-directional clamp. So using the same frame, I used a mechanical fastener. These are available from any Ace Hardware, Home Depot, Lowe's, or something like that. You drill a 3-inch hole, and then I had a knob that I used to screw it into the wood, and what that did, it gave me the ability to now have something, you can see the fastener, and I have something that I can turn to initiate the tightening process within the jig. So a couple other things to be aware of when you're doing this is if you do the long part first, do the long part first and leave yourself a little room, because it is, you know, you are gonna, as you're tightening, you don't want the edges to bind up against the other. And then on the side piece, you need to make sure that it's short enough that when you're clamped tight, that this doesn't interfere with the clamping process. So now I'm going to show you how easy it is to jig up a set of frames. And I think that after we do that, you'll get the idea. You'll see that it does two things. One, it keeps the frame completely, well anyway, keeps it from wiggling back and forth, so when you're all done, it's going to be perfectly plumb and perfectly square. That's the whole concept behind this jig, and it also makes the whole process much easier. So give me a second, let me get my frame pieces over here, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm going to show you how the assembly of the frame process actually works with the jig, and then hopefully I'll show you what the, oops, air compressor, I should have shut that off earlier. Anyway, the object behind this is pretty straightforward. You take your frame tops and you put them in a line. The frame is now going to go over it, and again, keep in mind that I did add a little extension on there just to keep that, because there is no groove. It's sitting actually on top of where it would fit within the hive. So you can see now that I have space on each side. I need a little extra room here. And now it's just a matter of putting your side rails in. I'm sure this is highly entertaining. This is all kind of mindless stuff that beekeepers I know do worldwide. So again, there's my last one. Putting the frame rails in, and you don't have to sit there and hold it, or if they fall over and things of that nature, it holds it in place just fine. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little tension on the side, and what that's going to do is kind of push the frames to one side to the other side. So I don't want a lot of tension to this, because I'm going to tighten the tension to the front. So now I got a little more space, and these are starting to tighten it up. You'll also notice they're starting to straighten up. Now when I do the front and start tightening it up, what it's going to do, as soon as I get some pressure on it, there we go. Now that I have some pressure on it, then what happens is the sides now are uptight to one another, which is really critical. Is when you're putting these together, you want to make sure. And the other part to this, of course, I'm not showing the actual, we're going to put the glue, put the pieces in, and the mechanical fastener. I'll show you where that would occur later. But so there's pretty much the whole process. They're all flat to the bottom. They're all straight up and down, so they're square this way and plumb this way. So there's that part. The next part, of course, would be we would be gluing these pieces on. And of course, you put it in, and you'll notice that they're, because the sides are straight and under tension, that these fit and they're flush, so there's no play, no give back and forth. I know that when I do frames individually, it's just, you know, there's a lot of pieces and parts, especially if you use like the first set of frames I showed you, that had the 2 pieces for the bottom. I don't like those at all, and I'm a big fan of these particular frames, which I think are 20 bucks for a set of 10 at S&TB's. So again, you can imagine that we've used a brush, we dipped it in the glue, we put glue on each one of these as we're assembling the bottom first. Of course, we would have put glue on the tops, but not the mechanical fastener at this point. So now, if you can imagine, these are all perfectly straight. They're tight. I don't think you need to tighten this up much more than that. And they're all good to go. So keep in mind that we're simulating that we glued it. We would use our mechanical fasteners. There's no wiggle, there's no holding it back, or the fastener's gonna get out of whack. It just goes in, it's a straight shot, 20 times and we're done with that. Now, if all goes well, because they're tightened in, and now the bottoms are glued, now I can come back and put my mechanical fasteners in the top of the frame, and I'm done. So that's my jig. If you have any questions, by all means send out a comment. It's a pretty simple process. We didn't actually assemble frames today, but my good friend Jack is with me today, and we got 80 frames to get ready, because I think swarm season's probably going to come early. We'll know a little later on today, because it's going to be gorgeous out today. So thanks a lot. There you go. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks. Bye.